Hi everyone, this is Navika Chada here, a cloud engineer and a Microsoft most valuable professional in developers technology. I warmly welcome each one of you to the fourth episode of Tech Chat with Navika, wherein today we would be discussing about cracking software engineering roles and startups. And for that, we have an expert with us today, Mr. Saurav Singh. Saurav is an AVP Engineering at Zomato, having worked at big tech startups such as Flipkart, Rivergo, Zomato, and that too at leadership positions. He has more than 10 plus years of extensive experience in the field of engineering and startups. He holds a BTech and an MTech degree from one of the most prestigious institute, IIT Delhi. He is one of the true leader who believes in empowering his teammates and is always willing to help others. Thank you so much, Saurav, for taking out your precious time. And I'm sure you must be having a hectic day. That too at 11 p.m. on a Saturday night.
Yeah, definitely. No issues. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast. And thank you so much again for an overwhelming introduction. Uh, good, like, good, excited to be here and I'd love to answer your questions.
It's my pleasure to have you. By the way, do you want to add something to your introduction? Because I took whatever I prepared, the intro was from the social media stuff that I was able to get. But something you want to tell something more about yourself to the audience, which is not up there on the social media?
I think you more or less covered most of the thing. I guess apart from working in startups, I tried some of my own startup. That is one which got missed in the introduction. That is the difficult part of the journey in my own career of 10 plus years, which we probably cover in the interview as well if we have any questions related to that. And that is more or less covered. And in Zomato, I spent 4 plus years, and that is probably the biggest journey or the longest journey that I had in any startup. So that is again something interesting that we might cover in the later on the session. Right? That's something
Awesome.
that is very good. Mhm.
Yeah. Then let's get started without any further ado.
Yeah.
Let's start talking about your career journey a bit. So, you had 10 years of experience, and you have, as I mentioned in your introduction, also you've worked in such big tech startups. And yeah, you've also, as you mentioned, you've founded a couple of companies as well. Um, and now you're currently working in Zomato, and I think more than 4 years, right?
Right.
And apart from that, you're from such a prestigious institute, which is every college student or every student's dream college, rather, I should say, right? Um, I'm very curious to know because majority of the people have that thought process. They have this dream of getting into FANG, right? And someone like you who is so much learned, so much experienced, right? Um, have you ever had that thought?
Very interesting. Short answer is yes, and obviously no as well, because the first thing which differentiate or my choice to not be in those companies are like I never wanted to settle in abroad. Uh, just like graduated out of the college, uh, and the second part is that those companies at the time when I was graduating back in 2013. The startup culture in India was not that popular. Not a lot of companies were there, and these bigger companies were the most like one of the most interesting options that we had that time, right? So there was a concept of day one, day two, day three in colleges at that point in time, and probably now it is called day zero or day minus one in some of these colleges. But uh, most of these companies used to come on day one, and not all the companies. Facebook, Microsoft. Twitter were the most popular companies that used to visit our campuses, and most of these companies were having offers from their US offices or some other offices around the world. And unfortunately, either they did not have any option from India, or if they at all had any options from India, that was not that lucrative, both from the opportunity or the growth perspective, or from even the compensation perspective, let's say, right? So, for me, being only seeing the options in India, I was open for not just these companies, these big companies, but also other Indian companies which were doing great at that point of time, right? So, not a lot of options at that time. Flipkart, which is a big company right now, was a very small company at that time. In fact, Zomato I'm working in was a very young company, 2 to 3 years. They have just started, and startup was just like getting popular. Startup companies were just getting popular in India, right? So I landed up in somehow in one company in Bangalore, and the journey started. That, to be very frank, the company was not very dynamic in nature. The role was not very challenging. They used to call themselves as a startup, but they were 15-year-old company, and the culture was like any other big companies in the India, right? So I went there. I was there for more than 1.5 years and learned few things. But I think uh, the kind of spark that you want to see in startup culture was missing for me, right? So, and that is the time when I took chance and moved to Flipkart, right? And unfortunately, fortunately, Flipkart's journey was not that big. I was a young SD too. I was there just for 2 months, and I got hired because Flipkart faced their first big billion day. It was a bad tech day for them because a lot of services got crashed, and they did not want to go bad next year. And they had a lot of teams, and their aim was to make sure that nothing is breaking on the next big billion day, right? So I was part of that particular journey, but uh, someone from my college, one of the junior from my college, he was working on a startup idea, and he called me, and I suddenly got excited. And somewhere in my mind, I this just got triggered, and I came back to Delhi. And during that small tenure of 2 months in Flipkart, even I made few good friends also. So even a lot of friends of mine of that time, I'm still in conversation with them nowadays also. But some one of my friend also came along with me. After 1 week I left the company, and me and him along with few other junior folks from the college, we started a company called, not started, I would say they have already started the company. We became the founding engineer in that company probably. And uh, then everything got changed, right? Before that I was executing things. I was writing code sitting on an AC cabin and something like that. In cubicles you were writing code just to do something, right? But now the equation was very different. I was writing code or doing problem solving not just for the sake of doing something, but the vision was very different. We had to make a successful startup. We just raised pre-series A round of funding, and the whole game was of not just creating things but building business, right? And that particular thought process is very different from just writing code or shipping software, right? You have to do things, you have to ship things, you have to sell things also, you have to make sure there are customers, they are transacting on your platform, and ultimately you have to make money. And the market was very competitive back in 2015. It was very hard to even raise funds, right? So uh, fortunately we were able to crack a lot of things. We shipped the product, we created end-to-end e-commerce for like booking tickets for from one place to another. It was altogether a different journey. Explaining that will take a long time, but it was a very exciting journey for me. And we took around a year, right? So and we worked on a lot of technologies. We learned a lot of things, not just technology, but how you survive in the market when you have the when you have a budget of just 4 or 5 months, right? So while not having tension of that some fund is getting lost, you now get very excited about your work. So you have to do things because you want your company to survive, make profits, and make you big. In terms of like, there was also there was one more thing, that when I came from Flipkart to this startup, I came at a salary cut obviously, and the stake was more on the equity side of things, right? So equity means you have more skin in the game, correct? So when you have more skin in the game, you put more efforts. And that was the thing for most of the folks who are working over there, right? So but unfortunately, fortunately, things could not work. But uh, एक कहावत है हिंदी में कि क्या डर है जिंदगी में, क्या होगा, कुछ नहीं होगा तो तजुर्बा होगा, right? So in English we say that why to fear doing something? If nothing happens, at least you will get some experience, right? So uh, that was a very great experience for me. Like doing that 1 year, in fact, changed my life, course of my career and life from there onward, right? So suddenly I became fascinated about startups only, right? So after that, it never got changed. I was only focused towards doing startup because I know the exponential growth, or like whatever I was looking for in my career is going to be only towards a startup. So I started following my startup streak. I then joined uh, few companies as a consultant, started earning
Mhm.
money, and there was a in between journey also. I started my own company. I was living in a 3 BHK house in Delhi. We were surviving on 15K per month, out of which 9K was our rent, right? So 6K for everything, for living, eating, internet, everything, right? So that was a very tough journey, right? Surviving in
Mm,
15K in Delhi is almost like impossible.
not
That gives you strength.
possible. Yeah.
That gives you strength, and the bad times came when we some of our co-founders decided. So I asked a very difficult question one day. Okay, how many of you want to quit or want to continue? And four out of
Mm,
six co-founders raised their hand. We want to quit, right? So that is one of the dark side of my career, that I saw a day where we were very excited about our product and suddenly everyone said no, right? So, and
mm,
that once we learned that not everything is piece of cake. Writing code might be easy, but building business is very difficult. We accepted that we might not be very matured at that point in time, but at least now I know I can differentiate which idea can flourish or which idea might not work. Obviously, I might be wrong even today, but at least I have certain idea that something
mm.
might not work or some sort of execution. In fact, I now know the idea is not important. Execution is important, right? So
Yeah.
that is something which came into my mind, and after that, that journey continued, and I just continued focusing on the startups, and now I'm here at Zomato. So that is the longer answer for it.
No, but that's such you've had a roller coaster ride, all in all, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And I mean, that's true. So we can say that once you were a founding engineer in that company, right? Like that company that you basically founded, in a way, you can say you were the founding member. That was actually the turning point in your life, which actually just
right.
sort of made you go in the direction of only startups. But that's true. Something that, I mean, just 1 year of experience I have, but I've heard also this, that in startups or small companies, we learn not only in length but in depth also, right? We get to work in more arenas and more different parts. And then you get like the learning and the growth is exponential, right? As compared to any other big tech company. So that's always there, and I just second your thought on that.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Also, I missed that part as well. That compared to bigger companies, we generally there is a probability of exponential growth in the startup, right? So there is
yeah.
always a chance that you might end up earning a lot of money and learning a lot of things compared to your other counterparts, other colleagues, come in the bigger companies. So there is a risk versus reward, right? So you take a risk, but you get a bigger reward.
Definitely, definitely. And that's true. And even one thing that now while you were just telling me about your story, now I've understood that if one is, one just anyone, maybe viewers plan to, start their own company or something, it requires a lot of groundwork, right? Because you have so much of responsibilities on your shoulder. When you're doing a job, you just have to work on that particular task or whatever role. But here, like you are the owner, your ship can actually sort of you have to make it. What do you say? Like you have to make
Right.
the entire company successful. So you have so many responsibilities. You're not just an engineer, but you have the whole responsibility carrying that light. So yeah, that's true. Um, you just mentioned about certain challenges that you faced in this your career journey, right? And I am sure that all of us have faced challenges or some type of challenges in our respective journeys. Do you want to throw some light on it? Do you want to share something? I mean, I'm sure tracking IIT would also wouldn't have been a piece of cake for you. Even we have had a conversation before it, right? And do you want to share something about it, or generally something else? And the challenges and how did you overcome it? Because now you're here, so I'm sure you've overcome all the challenges that you have faced.
I think you never overcome your challenges at any point in time. So I guess you should always look forward for bigger challenges in life, and that makes you ready for the next challenge, right? So if you think that you are settled, then I think you can't grow beyond that, right? So you should always look forward for bigger challenges. If I talk about my challenges, uh, I would say cracking IIT JEE was the least challenge for me. Compared to that, what kind of challenges that I face today or like faced in the past, they are like much difficult compared to when I was preparing for IIT, right? So uh, I guess we have also talked about this in the past, that when you prepare for IIT, probably 10% of the people are very smart and 90% of the people are average, right? And the real competition is between 10 out of 100 people, right? So but when you are in IIT, then all the 100 people are smart, right? And probably more than 50% of people are smarter than you. Now the competition is very tough, correct? So uh, and that is the thing when I realized, when I was like giving my first exam in IIT, and that is the time when I saw every single person in the college was studying, and that was not the case for me in the past, be it in coaching and be it in schools. Uh, During the exams, not everyone was studying, right? And that was the piece of cake for me. At least I was a serious student, no doubt, in at least in class 11th and 12th, but and that is the reason it was a piece of cake for me. But after that, it was very difficult, right? I thought I was champ in physics or maths or chemistry, but in college, when you get 5 out of 10 grade, then you realize, okay, this is very difficult, dude. And when people like some people who are under 10 rankers in IIT, and then they get F grade, and then you realize this is too difficult, yeah, right? So that is something that was a challenge during the college, but still that is very easy. It is academics, right? Academics can be cracked just by studying seriously for probably 1 or 2 weeks before the exam. You can crack those exams. Ultimately, people there make grades, right? So and I would like to break stereotypes here as well, that a lot of people think grade doesn't matter, but uh, it does matter, at least when you sit for those jobs, campus placement, right? Sorry, just a second.
That's
So when you sit for campus placement, it's a lot of companies filter your CV based on your resume,
Mhm.
based on your grades in the college. So and that is the probably the last time when then that grade is important. But to be very
Mhm.
frank, that is the opportunity when you get the job the most easiest way, right?
Right.
On campus placements are the most easiest one, because in my time back in 2013 also, we were only 70 folks in the batch, and there were 200 plus companies who came to hire in the college, and all the 70 people got hired in first 3 days only, right? So that was the easiest phase in terms of career, right? So and
Mhm.
probably and 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 that's not easy in terms of which company you choose, but that's easy in terms of cracking a job, right? So
Right.
and there is a lot of cognitive load as well, which company to go for. It's not just you interview, you also decide which company. You rank the companies in the order you want to go into. Like probably if you get two offers, you have to pick only one offer out of it, and that is pre-decided before even you give the interview. So that is few difficulties, but still that is easy, right? You get the job, right? So at least you start your career out of the college. But
Mhm.
once you are in, and once you go into the job, then the real struggle start, right? So now you are in college where everyone is smart. Now you are in a company based on your expertise. Probably everyone. So when you were graduating from the college, you were senior most. When you are entering the company, you are the youngest most, right? So now you are again junior, correct? So now you have to uh, like again, like going step by step from SD1 probably to SD2. Somewhere it is not even SD, it is associate engineers, right? So the
Yeah.
journey might be very long. Then you become SD1, then you learn a lot of things. It depends again on the company, your manager, your leader, who you are working under, which company you are working for, and then you take a lot of decisions, and those decisions are very difficult, right? So uh, that is for me. Like when I chose to like leave Flipkart, it was a very difficult decision. I was just growing in my career. I got a job of my choice. I chose Flipkart like very mindfully, and the compensation, the team I got in was very interesting for me. And then you
Mhm.
suddenly choose in 2 months that you don't want to be there and want to do a startup is a very difficult decision, at least for a child of 25 year of age, right? So that at that point in time, it was very difficult for me. Then you come to Delhi at a very low salary, and then suddenly you decide after 1 year that okay, that is not going to happen. Then you suddenly leave everything and start working on your own startup. That is again a very difficult phase, right? And after 4, 5, 6 months, you decide you have to shut down everything and restart again from scratch, right? So these are
Mhm.
the very difficult journeys, I will say. And then when I again after that growth phase, when you leave Revigo, it was again a very difficult decision, because I
Hmm.
thought I will be in Rivigo for next 10 years. After that, I am in Zomato. Again, a roller coaster ride, lots of ups and downs in multiple roles, individual contributor to managers, managing the most difficult part of the company, consumer search, like one of the most difficult, having faced down times when you were leading the team and like answering the
Yeah,
most difficult person in the company. Then these are the few difficult choices that you make, and then you ultimately become a better person.
that's right. That's true. And now that you shared the story, one thing I've learned that one should take risks in life, right?
Correct.
Because you have taken a lot of risks, be it your founding company, be it leaving Flipkart. It was a risk, right? Because you weren't too sure about the future. But even I read it somewhere just last night. I was just going through some social media posts, and there was a very nice post that until you take a risk, how will you will have to take a risk in order to try something new, right? You don't take a risk, and you just sit in your comfort zone, and there would be no
Correct.
learning then, right? It's like you cannot live the same day for the entire life of yours, right? In order to change that pattern of the day, you will have to sort of try something new, or you'll have to take a risk. And your story just reflects that particular post or particular quote that I read yesterday, and it's just a live example that you're giving.
A very,
So,
very
in
famous line that I used when I was leaving Flipkart, just interrupting you in between, sorry for that.
hmm,
But when I was on Flipkart, there was a TVF series called, I'm not sure, there was a startup series that TVF folks launched at that point of time. What was the name? Pictures series, season one, if you was that series. There was a line in there. So, like,
okay. Hmm,
long story short, there was a line in that particular startup, that particular show, that
hmm,
if you don't take risk, there is no failure, right? But if you take risk, either you get success or you might get failed, right? You might get success, you might get failed. There is
hmm,
a chance at least. But if you don't take a risk at all, then the chance is zero. For success, at least it is zero. For the
hmm,
failure
hmm.
also it is zero, but for the success, zero. And
Right.
that same statement I said to my manager in Flipkart, that okay, I want to leave Flipkart to join a startup because I want to take risks. Because if I don't, and the manager instantly said to me, okay, the probability of startup success in India is 4%. Do you want
Hmm,
to leave the company? I said, and then I use this line, okay, if I don't
hmm.
take the risk, it will be 0%. At least now it's 4%, right? So that's what I
Right.
would like to say. You should always take risk. At least you will get success. If you don't take risk, then it's average, right? Everyone is average only.
Yeah, we can tweak this line a little bit. That if you take a risk, there is a chance of success, or there is a chance of learning. I mean,
Correct,
I don't
correct,
treat
correct.
it as a failure. It's fine. It's added up to your knowledge when you founded a company, and unfortunately, it didn't work out the way how you wanted. But at least you've learned so much from it, right? And that's helping you in your current role as well.
Right.
So it's like a learning. Why should we give it a word as failure? It's just adding up to your knowledge, right? Everything doesn't work out the way how you want it to be. So that's true. You mentioned somewhere about grades and the college and stuff, and that's something I have a couple of questions regarding it, but maybe we
Yeah,
can
yeah,
take
sure.
it a bit later on. And now we're gonna come on to the main question, which I'm sure people would love to hear about from a person like you. If someone wants to apply for a software engineer role at Zomato, what are the skills that you look in for a person? I mean, this is very specific to Zomato.
uh, like very specific to Zomato. It's, I think, in my interview style, it might be very specific to all the startups I have been in,
Okay.
and slightly there is a slightly different culture in Zomato, I would say. And first of all, we do not differentiate people based on their college credentials. Uh, uh,
Okay.
you might be from tier one, tier two, tier three. It's absolutely depends on what you have done in the past and what's your current state now. If you are a champ in your current state, being from a tier three college, you are equally welcome to get interviewed at Zomato, and you will be totally judged on how you did well in your interview compared to what
Mhm.
you did in your college and before college for preparing for these exams, right? So that is
Okay.
not something come into our mind. And in terms of skills, it all depends on at which level we are hiring for. So I have interviewed people all the way from SD1 to engineering managers all over here. When we interview a fresher out of college, the qualities that we look is slightly different from when we interviewing someone who is coming at a EM or SEM level. right? So there is a concept that I use is called coachable versus non-coachable skills. Uh, like understanding a technology, knowing a technology is something, and knowing the concepts is something, right? Probably. So what a database is, how you use databases, how you store data, how you create a schema is one part of it, one part of understanding the technology. Versus if you know Dynamo, how DynamoDB works, or how like let's say Cassandra works is a different thing, right? So these are the concepts which can be coached, right? If you have not used how DynamoDB works in college, that is absolutely fine. The company at Zomato might be using DynamoDB or MySQL or something like that, and you if you might not have worked in college, and that is absolutely fine. But at least you know the basic concept of DBMS, how databases works, right? So you will not be judged on if you know certain technologies. You will be judged on you at least know the concepts of those technologies, right? So that is the part of coachability versus non-coachability. The second part is a lot of people, it might be controversial for a lot of people, but I do judge people on their data structures and algorithm skills. A lot of people might say I'm not good at data structures and algorithm, but I am very good at software development, right? But I think I use a very uh, probably cliche line. I have been I
Yeah.
have used this for multiple times, but I use this line that any logical person in the world can code, right? If you can understand logic,
Mm-hmm.
like what is if, what is else, what is a loop, something like that. If you repeat something, it will happen multiple times. It is logic, right? So if you
Yeah.
know the logic, you can learn coding very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And you understand English probably, and then after you can learn English. Sorry, you can learn coding very quickly. What
Yeah.
make you different? What the differentiator between a good software engineer versus bad software engineer or average software engineer is given a problem, how efficiently you solve it, right? Writing the code and writing the code efficiently, which saves CPU, which saves money, which make it faster to run, something like that, is something which differentiate you from the others, right? So if you are working in a company which runs at a very high scale, which has to save a lot of infrastructure cost, which have to make sure that nothing breaks on the production, all the corner cases are handled, all the cases are well tested, then obviously the skills like whether you write code more vigilantly in terms of writing in a way which is more efficient versus just writing it to pass the test cases, that if I given a input I get a B output, then that is the differentiator, right? And someone who understands data structures and algorithm is, I assume and I believe, are better in terms of making the code more efficient versus someone who doesn't understand. So that is where I judge at least fresher out of the college on these skills as well. I do not judge people on very tricky questions. I won't give a question that find the median of an unsorted array, which is very difficult problem to solve in an interview. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
uh, I'm sure a lot of people who will be watching this interview will say, okay, that is a easy question, but trust me, that's not a that's not an easy question. But I will rather give them the question which is solvable, and I would not judge them on the facts that whether they get the right solution, but I will judge them on the way they are going like reaching towards the solution, right? They start with the basic running solution, then go towards optimizing it, because that is the way you will be actually creating software, right? You will first create MVP, minimum viable product. If that MVP works, business works, there is a product market fit, then you goes on adding more features to it, right? And that is the philosophy which should be used in software development as well, right? At least you create certain piece which runs, which does the job, and they then keep on optimizing to it. So what I judge more in ki how the person is reaching the solution rather than exact solution. Probably some people might be wrong in getting the solution, but at least they tried in a most appropriate way, which we can't say most appropriate, at least in the right approach, there was a right approach to reach towards the right solution. But there are certain folks who knows the problem because they have read somewhere and they suddenly comes to the final solution. That's not even interesting from the discussion perspective. The bad part is that they don't even disclose that they know the solution. And the best, for me, the good part is someone discloses that he knows the solution. I still want him to run me through the solution, right? And then I question them, okay, why do you think this is the right solution, or why do you think this is the most efficient solution? What you would have done if you have not known this problem, something like that, right? So, and sometimes I even ask to code very simple questions, like that people might not even expect it from me, that I will ask this question, probably something like uh, uh, is BST right? It's binary. It sounds like a very simple problem, But trust me, 50% of the developers write it wrong from in the very first attempt, right? And
Mm-hmm.
these are certain basic things that I generally check for the freshers. Things little change which when I go towards SD2, SD3 or EM or SEM level, and that get more towards for the senior roles, we generally check for the leadership skills as well, how well they have managed in the past, and what are the high impact stories that they have worked on, what is the most interesting stories that they are proud of, something like that, and then we get into the depth of some of those stories, right? And by depth I mean I touch each and every piece of that story, right? When you say that I created this software and this made, let's say, $50 million for the company, then I would like to listen your contribution in that particular story. Like, were you the part of the problem solving, or you just was executing that particular story? Did you think about the business outcome? Were you measuring the business impact? How are you measuring the different part of things? Like, there is a business aspect of a problem, there is a product aspect of a problem, there is an engineering aspect of the problem, right? You start from 0 to 1 when you only focus on MVP or the minimum viable product. When you see the product market fit, then you probably not concerned much about the engineering part. When you see a fit, then you go from 1 to 10 journey. Then you are more towards product and tech part of it. And when things are fine, you focus more on like making the software scalable, so that when the software goes or the technology or product goes from 10 to 100, you should be able to handle the scale, right? So every part of the journey is very important. So for seniors, these sort of um, uh, understanding is very important. For mid-level, it's probably not just data structures, you also being judged on the designs part of as well, because ultimately when new requirements come, you don't have to only code, you have to design the software, right? How multiple system interacts with each other, how data from one service to other service will go, how will the networking, what with the protocol, how will we interact, it will be gRPC call, HTTP call, or it will be event driven system, something like that, right? So, and then we will question around key what will happen. So there is a functional, non-functional requirements, right? Let's say you have requirements of 1 million requests per second to be handled in less than 10 milliseconds every request, right? Then how do you think of such solutions, right? Probably you might not have experience in that direction, but at least we force you to think that what you would have done if you have this problem, right? Because writing a correct software versus writing a scalable software is a different skill, right? So you might
Right.
write a e-commerce application which can take orders, store data into database, and when you retrieve all the orders, can show the history. But suddenly, if that software is being used by hundred or millions of users, then everything start failing, right? So that's a
Right.
different skill set that you gain when you work for the high scale companies. So these are the slight different that we judge in those candidates.
Each of the answer is so educative that even I'm learning the process, and I'm having so many questions in my mind. I'm not going to ask all of those because of the time constraint, but
Yeah.
definitely a few of them. Um, so like you have mentioned, like for the leadership roles or for the senior roles, you have these certain extra things apart from the technical skills that you're looking for a person, right? But when we talk about freshers, technical skills are definitely there. Anything apart from that that you look into, that you look for?
Right. I forgot to mention, but apart from technical skills, soft skills also matter. The communication skills, how malleable are you to learn? Are you accepting? Are you listening to others or not? Right. Sometimes the attitude or the way the person talks, it feels like he's not liking to listen you. Right. He's not accepting the feedback. He's not accepting the defeat, probably. Right. So by defeat, I meant the solution that he proposed was not most optimized. You are always allowed to like debate that my solution is better, but at least try to listen what the person in front of you is saying, right? So that is the listening part of it, right? When you listen, because when you goes into the organization, you will have to listen. Otherwise, if you think I am always right, then it's not going to work, right? So listening attitude is very important, and obviously for me communication skills is very important, because if you can't communicate well, then your work is not that great, because probably in startups, at least in startup world, you need to collaborate a lot, right? So, and collaboration depends a lot on how well you communicate, correct? So probably you might have done something or you are thinking something, but if you're not able to explain what impact that particular work might get into the system, or how that particular thing might get implemented, if you are not able to explain that, then that all thinking is of no use, right? So communication skill is very important, and that comes with the knowledge. Obviously, the knowledge and communication go along one on one, right? So both are complementary. You should have knowledge, you should have knowledge to communicate, and you should have communication skill to communicate your knowledge, right? Both are complementary. So you should have knowledge, that is understanding of technology for software engineering role, and then the communication skill, so that you can communicate effectively with others as well, right? So these are the soft skills which also matters.
Sure. So we can see you give equal weightage to both knowledge and communication skills.
Yeah, I would say not equal, because engineers, I guess, by default are introverts in nature. Most
Okay.
unfortunately, a lot of engineering colleges have a very female male ratio is very difficult, like very bad,
A
right? So
lot, a lot. Yeah.
so the communication skill that they have in college is mostly among the male, and that's not very good, to be on the very sad side. That's not acceptable in terms of how you communicate in the corporate world. But I would say it's not that formal in the startups, it's casual. But I'm not talking about how good you speak English, right? I'm not talking about
Yeah.
how good your English is. Even if you speak in your mother tongue or in Hindi or English, whatever it is, at least you should be able to communicate in a way that someone in front of you understand what you are trying to say, right? A lot of people, they they are very good in English, but they are not able to communicate what they are trying to say. People don't make sense of their words, and this is very common. These might be the hiring mistakes, but this is very common. People.
So the recruitment process, if you talk about Fang, or even in general other companies, there are some companies who follow this fixed procedures, fixed process of rounds that one candidate has to go through. But in startups, I think I can say this in general, that they don't follow such a way, and especially in Zomato, as you just said. So, like how it goes in Zomato, like we can just, you can, a cold email works, a cold message on a LinkedIn works. Similarly, is it for the other startups? That you want to tell something more about Zomato in this question?
In Zomato, the cold email does work. The LinkedIn connections and DMs on LinkedIn will definitely work. And once your profile is shortlisted by the person who is referring you on the pipeline that we have, hiring pipeline that we have internally, then it all depends on the interview, right? Earlier it was pretty unstructured, I would say, because we were also learning things. But even in that unstructured way, we had a lot of like intelligent people, a lot of cool developers, a lot of strong developers, in fact, I would say. And the probably because we did not go through the rules. Like if we liked someone in the very first round, we won't restrict that round for 1 hour. We might take the round for 2.5 hours, and probably close the interview on that day in that interview itself, right? And we are probably the first company who conveys the candidate in the interview itself, okay, you got selected for the next round or could not clear it through, right? And that is, we feel the onus of doing that, because like keeping someone on wait who has invested his time is very, what we think is very bad, and that doesn't close the loop, and he for the lifetime creates a bad memory for that particular company, right? So I assume everyone in this world who is a software engineer has and worked for multiple companies will have this experience, bad experience in the past, that HR said I will contact you later, and then they never contacted, right? So
Yeah.
that is what we never does. We close the loop within the call itself. If not in the call, we instantly send the email post the interview call, and that is done by interviewer only, not even the HR. The interviewer
Okay.
who has taken the interview, and we are probably the first company we who gives the correct feedback. By feedback, I mean we don't say it with a filter that okay, you could not make it for the next round. Sorry, and apply next time. We directly say, okay, what went wrong? What all skills that we are looking for, and you missed on these things at these points. And we will love to see you again in some days when you feel confident on those. And in fact, we have re-interviewed few people after 3 or 4 months, and we have selected them after that, right? So
Hmm.
people do work on these mistakes because we have given them the right feedback, and that's where
Yeah.
I feel the Zomato is very different from even the startups.
Hmm.
Startups might be hiring aggressive with no rules, but here in Zomato, we might not have that strict rules, but at least we are very good in giving the feedbacks, right? Like in during the interviews,
Right.
and that makes a lot of difference. I think my conversion rate might be very very low, probably 5 in 100, but at least I have a lot of those interviewees like were given a positive feedback about me, their interaction with me, and that will be the case. The conversion rate are generally this only, right? So uh, and it's up to you. You keep on applying, you ultimately get success. And you should people should not like get demotivated by because they could not crack their dream
Hmm.
company or something like that.
Hmm.
That was the case for me also. I was planning for some other company in college. I could not
Hmm.
get through that, and I obviously I was disappointed, but I did not lose the hope. That will keep on happening, and uh, life will keep on going, and you have to keep on like trying, and ultimately you will land up somewhere. And I generally believe that where you land is, in fact, I never planned to come in Zomato, right? So that happened by some sort of events that ultimately landed me in Zomato. Now I'm liking Zomato too much, very much, but that was never planned, right? But when you land somewhere, you probably start liking that, and that becomes your forte for some time, right? So uh, from process perspective, we definitely don't have any process. Now we started having at least 2 rounds so that the interviewee doesn't get rejected because of an individual's feedback. We give him a benefit of doubt that probably one person could not judge him well, and probably someone else will judge him well, right? So
Hmm.
but again, that is case by case again. If the first
Hmm.
interviewer was confused that okay, I think he is like uh, like 50% case, then we give the second chance. If he's
Hmm.
absolutely like confident, and the reputation of interviewer is also good, then that is probably the end, right? In some cases, and also it depends on the interviewer as well. Not every interviewer is the same, right? Everyone has a
Hmm.
different strategy to judge
Yeah.
some, and that's not possible, right? Every person in the world is different. Everyone's strategy, while more or less the framework is same for like engineering interviews, like you based on your experience, you are either asked the data structures, algorithm, your design
Hmm.
questions, right? But ultimately the judgment, the way the person in front of you is judging, giving you hints, perceiving your way of like solving the problem is might be very different, right? And that
Hmm.
is the sad part of any interview in the world, right? Be it
Hmm. Hmm.
UPSC interview where people depends on the group that is taking their interview, and the scores like become very different for different groups, right? So that is the sad part of it, but ultimately you will learn something out of those interviews. Most of the interviewers are good only, and until
Hmm.
unless someone is being selected randomly, so that might be the bad case. Ultimately startups
Hmm.
have limited people in their pool, right? So ultimately they have to select interviewers from that pool only, right? So some interviewer might not be that great in judging people. They might be looking for the exact answer that the question
Yeah.
that they ask, versus someone who is looking for the process that the interview is following. So the strategy of judging might be different, but from the process perspective is more or less open. Depends on the candidate. Some candidate can get selected in 1 round, some in two, and probably some cases it can be 3 rounds.
Okay. Thank you so much for such a detail. And this is something that even I've got to know that you have sort of fixed 2 rounds. As in, you're giving a benefit of doubt to the candidate in case it doesn't go well in the first round. So he has a second try as well. Definitely,
Right.
depending case to case.
At least the feedback which was given with honesty, right? That is very
Yeah,
important. When you are
very.
genuinely caring about the candidate in front of you, that his career, his timing is also important, then you will give the right feedback, and then that
Hmm.
generally turns into the better version of yourself. So that's important
Right.
also.
That is true. That's true. And I have seen that. That's the reason saying I'm saying I can literally vouch for that. Um, Quickly, can you please give a sneak peek into how a software engineer's role day looks like at Zomato? How a software engineer's day look at Zomato?
Yeah, unlike bigger companies, probably where your day start with checking the emails. This is for
Mm-hmm.
senior people. Then I can go to SD 1s and 2s. But a lot of I listen to interviews of a lot of senior folks from different companies, and a lot of people says I start my work with checking the emails, then planning for the day. Unfortunately, in Zomato, planning for a particular day sometimes doesn't work. Most of the time doesn't work because
Hmm.
uh, very dynamic in nature, right? Uh,
Right.
unless you have a fixed project with fixed deadlines, even then
Hmm.
there is a probability that something will get changed by the end of the day. But it's pretty dynamic. Obviously, we still work on a very aggressive deadlines. We are public company, but still the culture is by heart we are a startup only, and
Right.
that is the reason we are capturing the market, and like we are the leaders in the market, and we have multiple businesses that we operate on, and we ship a lot of things, not just
Hmm.
within Zomato. We have Blinkit, we have Hyperpure, we have um,
Hmm.
other projects, and we have new businesses lines in line, and you will see a lot of things from Zomato in near future as well. And that is only being possible because we ship a lot of things, and we are not a very big engineering team. I will say we are still like for Zomato, it is still under 400, and including Blinkit, I guess it will be under 700, I guess, but still. Uh, for a $10 billion company, it's a very small engineering team. Our competitor and few other companies have a much bigger engineering team, and the impact wise, I think engineers here are making impact because they are working in a very dynamic environment. Probably
Hmm.
in other companies, changing the team might take months or years. Here, you might change your team within a week, right? So,
Hmm.
and every engineers are prepared for that. So day-to-day life is probably generally that start with a stand-up for most of the teams. They generally plan for the day, and sometimes what happens last day might change the course of action for the current day,
Hmm.
right? So last day might have been so sometimes during the stand-ups only, which is technically not the right way, but I will again say that's not much structured, and that is the
Hmm.
reason we operate in a very aggressive way. Sometimes
Hmm.
stand-ups only, we see the data of the work we have done. Uh, we are we are we are mostly a data driven company. We see a lot of data. We get the customer insights because we have a huge customer base of more than 5 crores, I guess, in India, and that gives you a lot of data. We get a lot of traffic, we get a lot of orders every day, and whatever you do on daily basis create changes the life of a lot of customers, right? And ultimately seeing the data defines what might be the next course of action. While so
Hmm.
I would say we don't have plan for quarters, we don't have plans for months, we generally have plans for week, right? So and the within the week itself the course of action might get changed based on the fact that what happens the last day, right? So thinking in terms of day, it's very dynamic. Apart from work, uh, chilling within the office, a lot of friends, people go
Hmm.
have lunch together, and unfortunately, nothing too much to play in Zomato. There is
Hmm.
You won't get uh, too many places where you can go and fun, but we have sleeping rooms as well. But people who feel tired, they can go and sleep for few hours if they want. We have in-house, uh, uh, you know, no- whatever facilities that you can think of in corporate, like consultants for your physical health. We have in-house gym, which is 24/7 open, not 24, at least in the office timings it's open, and post
Hmm.
office timings as well. Any time in the office time, even during the office timings, if you want to go and work out, you can go and work out. Earlier it used to be closed during the office timings,
Hmm.
uh, last few months we took the decision that is physical health is very important, because generally uh, that's where the things come, like a lot of people get sick, and or due to some xyz reason getting unhealthy, and then missing the deadlines and all happens because they are not taking care of their health, right? So
Hmm.
Zomato,
Hmm.
there's a concept of that health is the priority, then the works come, right? So we
Hmm.
focus a lot in terms of employees health as well. You have to make sure that you're taking good care of yourself. If you should go to gym, there was a funny concept of
Hmm.
uh, uh, your ESOPs being vested based on how healthy you are getting, right? So based on the
Oh
weight
goodness.
lose, your ESOPs will get vested. Obviously that is the
Hmm.
most difficult vesting, because a lot of people don't lose weight, right? So but
Yeah.
that was interesting. A lot of people were getting interested, but that is not practical, obviously. But at least
That's
what that was a fun part of it, right? So we try to somehow incorporate the health along with the work and
Hmm.
along with your growth within the company. We
Hmm.
recently had a CFO, chief fitness officer. We call it chief fitness. You
Oh
can you can
goodness.
read about it on social media. He is a
Hmm.
very energetic person. He take care of employees' health. He's planning everything and anything about the employees' health and fitness within the company, and that is, I think, unique thing that Zomato is doing within the industry. So while work
That's
is important, health is very important, fun is important. Obviously, we do party. We have farmhouses in Gurgaon, different parts of Gurgaon. Our CEO also have a farmhouse where we go and occasionally party, and we
yeah.
are going to have a offsite as well in coming week. So that will be complete tech team, full tech team offsite, and it will be a fun event. So we do have recreational and some these activities which keep engaging the employees and make sure their bonding is strong. That helps ultimately make the overall efficiency of the team better. Right?
Hmm. Zomato takes the full care of work-life balance. And one thing for sure on a lighter note, I can say that most of the employees in Zomato would be fitness freaks then, right?
The biggest example is our CEO only. He
Hmm.
is now a fitness freak, right? So earlier he was not very caring about his own health, but now you can see a lot of social media posts about how he's conscious about his own health, and now he's inspiration for a lot of people. I guess he
Hmm.
himself lost 20-25 kgs in last 4 or 5 years, right? So that is a kind of like I have seen him like getting fitter in last 4 or 5 years, right? So that is inspiration for a lot of people. In fact, now when he sees me eating samosa somewhere in downstairs, he calls me and say, "I was seeing that you are eating samosa." So he fingers it out as well, right? So
Yeah.
so he's very curious about and very like vigilant about how people are like
Yeah.
should be very vigilant about their health along with the work.
That's so good to hear. No doubt Zomato is a dream company of so many people. Here's the reason how a day looks like at Zomato. Okay. Sort of, I was going through your social media post the other day, right? Basically on LinkedIn, and I saw one of your posts wherein you had shared about your learnings from your experience, right? And this second last point I still remember was that basically you cultivate the next generation leaders, and one should make themselves replaceable, right? That's what you mentioned as one of your learning from the experience. But if we see the scenario right now, correct, at least a year back, we have seen this rough patch in the industry, IT industries, so much of recession going on.
Hmm.
And still it is partially existing maybe somewhere, some part of the world. Um, Most of the people who have not been laid off, they have this advice that, create an impact in the company and also make yourself irreplaceable so that you don't fear losing the job and you're able to, survive the layoff without, you just don't get laid off. Then what do you have to say on that?
I think this is one of the most difficult question to answer, but and it's very hard to digest also, right? And because that is not the natural or normal thing that we generally see in the companies, right? Most of the people
Hmm.
generally want to make impact and stick to their role because that is the most comfortable zone for them. Like being the part of a team and then being there for 4 or 5 years, you will be most comfortable, right? But again, as I said, that environment is very dynamic, and that boils down to very interesting social media debates like leadership versus management, right? So how
Yeah.
managers are different versus leaders. So if you simply search Google for manager versus leader, you will get a lot of posts about it. And
Yeah.
just just put it briefly, managers are someone
Hmm.
who who build their assets or resources as their
Hmm.
employee, and they generally
Hmm.
controls that resources, right? Versus the leader who works in more collaborative environment, who foster the culture of growth, who work collaboratively, who make sure that not just him, his team is also growing along with him, right? So that is the difference
Hmm.
between manager and manager. Manager sounds like a more selfish role. It might sound bad, but it is what it is, right? That sounds more like
Yeah.
a selfish role versus leader who lead from the front. The aim
Yeah.
is to make sure that not just he grows, but his whole team grows. And obviously that comes with a lot of responsibility, that you absorb the criticism, share the success, etc. Right? You must have read in my social media post. So why I said that you should make yourself replaceable, because ultimately, while working on a lot of stories that you do within your company or within your team, lot of business stories, tech stories, whatever it is, ultimately you will be doing that thing along with the collaboration with the other folks in the team, right? So ultimately that will, as a leader, what you will be doing, you will be taking the buy-ins of other teammates, right? By buy-ins I mean, you are making sure they are convinced, they are on the same page, right? Versus managers who are simply saying, this is what we need to do and please go and execute, right? But the leaders do not operate in that way. They do make sure that people in their team are on the same page. They understand the why part of the problem rather than just the what and how part of it. So when they understand why, they contribute to the solutioning as well, right? And that becomes very interesting. At least for me, when I was doing things, I always used to make sure that everyone in the team knows why we are doing it, right? And when you explain that why, and that's where the communication is also very important. When you explain them why, then they become very interesting. When they become very interested about how we are going to solve it and what is the solution for that, right? And that, in that way, when you see, so again, there's a manager versus leader. The leaders are generally, they don't have fragile ego. That is a very interesting line that even the CEO of the company in our company uses, that as a leader you can't have the fragile ego. By fragile ego, what I mean is that you can't always think that you are the right. You have to take the feedbacks from other as well. There might be cases that in your team you might not be expert in everything, right? There might be experts who thinks well, whose product thinking is better than you, right? Whose technological skills are better than, probably you might not be expert in databases. You might be expert in, probably, let's say, microservices, but not expert in data. Someone in your team is more knowledgeable about, let's say, Cassandra or DynamoDB, but you might not be that knowledgeable about. Someone in your team might be good in Elasticsearch or Solar, and you might not be that good in those technologies. Then you have to accept it, right? That person is better than me. His solution or his suggestions might be more valuable than my solution, right? So that's where the leadership is key, that you accept the fact that you are not the only one and you are not expected to be the best one in the team, right? So ultimately, when that process happens, what happens is, you identify certain folks or one of the folks in your team who is capable of actually taking up the charge of that role, because ultimately your thinking in a particular team becomes stagnant, right? So you need a fresh perspective. And technically every engineer is creative. By certain amount they are creative, right? They can think, they have a logical thinking for sure. Ultimately whatever you code or whatever solution that you build, you need some sort of creativity. And when you are in the process of, like, finding the solution of a problem in hand, you will realize that there are people who are either equally at par capable of what you are doing, or sometimes there might be people who are more capable of what you are doing. And ultimately your impact within the companies, within that particular team, is going to be stagnant. And that is the bad shape to be in, because if you are not creating an impact and someone from outside sees that you, along with your other teammates, and you are technically redundant for that particular team, then that is a bad shape. Then there is a higher chance that you will get laid off, right? Versus you find this fact that I am now redundant for the team. There are folks in the team who can take the responsibility. I should rather go and find a different opportunity within the organization, because a company like Zomato, in fact, other startups, very easy to get switch your role within the company, like within a different project or within a different departments altogether. Some people go from engineering to product as well, right? So that is very common nowadays, and that is generally possible in a startup only. You can't go from engineering to product in companies like Facebook or Google. That might be a very challenging shift in those companies, but in startups it's pretty normal. People do try product management from the engineering things and all that. So at some time you might realize that the current role is stagnant, you are not making that impact, someone in the current team is capable of doing what you are doing. It's the right time that you like raise that person as a leader and take the next charge. And trust me, that ultimately makes you more respectable in the company, right? People start respecting you more. And when you see in the past, you realize that, okay, I built these products, and they are doing good. So ultimately, that is a better feeling than being stuck in a particular role, ultimately limiting your impact within the company, being only
Hmm.
known for that particular product versus impact in multiple product, multiple directions, and being known for multiple things. Which is the better state that you think, right?
Hmm.
I guess the second one is the better state. That is the reason I said make yourself by replaceable. I mean, find your replacement at the next generation of leader rather than like letting yourself go from the, I'm not talking about letting yourself go from the company. I'm talking about creating
Hmm.
leader out of your team. And that is one of the core responsibility of leader as well, right? Leadership is all about creating next generation of leader, because ultimately you will either leave that particular role or you will probably leave the company. Then what will happen to that particular product? Someone has to take
Hmm.
that charge, right? And when I talk to anyone in the company and he's, let's say, handling a particular team, I generally let's say they have spent 4 or 5 years in that particular product, I simply ask the question, who after you, right? And sometimes
Hmm.
they don't really answer. Sometimes people even say that I don't have any single person in my team who can take the charge of that, but these two
Hmm.
person can take the charge of that. These are fuzzy
Hmm.
and wrong answers, I guess. Being in a team
Hmm.
for 4 or 5 years, if you have not cultivated enough the people that they can take the charge of leadership, then that is your failure. You have not grown them. You have not made them. Even their growth is important, right? If you are growing, then their growth is also, and that was the leadership is, right? Then you will
Hmm.
have to actually leave that place, because if someone is growing, then you will also. It is very important. Generally, what some companies make the mistake is that the leader goes, someone else from the outside come and join the team, right? That might work sometimes, but this is very important that the leader should be from the within the team, because there is a context attached to the every problem, right? And I think context is king. It takes some time to get into in that shape only. I have seen unsuccessful people coming from outside trying to be at least at par to the previous leader, but they are unsuccessful first because there is no respect. There is no
Hmm.
inherent respect because that takes some time, and also there is some sort of anger also, why someone else came and take the charge, why we are not capable of doing that, right? So
Hmm.
that is something which ultimately comes into the bad shape. I will rather prefer that someone from within the team should take the charge of leadership, and that is what replacement I was talking about.
Oh goodness. I just love your thought process. I mean, the other day when I was going through LinkedIn post, also it was reflecting the type of content you give over there, and now this explanation. And actually, if you're raising other leaders, this actually reflects on you, like such a good leader you are, right? And of course, definitely, then you're creating an impact. So it actually reflects the type of person you are and such a responsible person. And no explanation could be better than one that you just gave right now. So thank you so much for that. Each answer of yours has been so much informative and educative. This 1.5 hour of mine has been like I've literally learned something new. Believe you me, and thank you so much for that. Um, so, sort of as we are nearing towards the conclusion of this episode, I have some quick questions for you. It's like a rapid fire round, which helps the audience understand as to how you are as a person a little bit more. That though we have
Yeah,
already understood a lot. Okay, then. So, are you ready?
yeah, yeah, sure.
Great. So, you have to select one. Okay, smart work or hard work.
Smart work.
Okay. Okay, the other answer I know maybe work from home or work from home.
Work from office.
Fang or startup. We all know.
Startup.
Early bird or night owl.
Night out.
Night owl. Oh, that's new. Okay, if not, if you weren't into the software engineering field, then what?
UPSC, IAS.
I recall that from our earlier conversation, right?
Yes.
That's right. Okay. Saurabh the boss or Saurabh the leader?
Sort of the leader. Obviously, that's what we are
We
talking
just,
about.
yeah. See what a coincidence. And when you were just answering, I was like, I had written the same question. We can call it telepathy. Okay. Saurabh the introvert or Saurabh the extrovert?
Mix, I guess. I'm not very extrovert, but I'm not very
Mm-hmm.
introvert as well. But I'm more towards the introvert side.
Okay. Okay, so what type of employee do you prefer? The one who completes his work on time but compromises on the quality of the work, or the one who delays a little bit and takes a slight more time, but provides you with quality work and completes it with utmost perfection.
I have a very controversial answer. We want quality and we believe in and quality and pace. This is our philosophy at Zomato. Quality
Okay.
and pace.
I was thinking this is going to be the answer. I swear, when I was preparing this question, I was like, okay, I actually know the
This
answer.
is the saying in Zomato, quality and pace. You always talk in ands. We have never ors that
There is no
we
or
don't
operator. There is
there is
and
no or.
operator.
Generally, we don't have or, we have always and quality and pace. And that is very interesting thing. You will see people talking in those lingos only that you can't compromise
Hmm.
quality because of the pace.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
And our CEO
Okay.
believes that both is possible. He is himself is a
Hmm.
is a coder. He coded the
Yeah.
first few versions of Zomato, and he believes in the quality as well as the
Hmm.
pace.
Hmm. Hmm. All right. Last but not the least, calculative risk or safe play.
Calculative risk, obviously, again.
I swear, I already had question answers to these questions like now. I was like, till the time we reached towards the end, towards the rapid fire, I was like, you've already told so many things in the interview. I mean, in
Right,
the
right.
podcast itself, that now the answers are so but obvious. But still, it's good to hear from you. Night owl, I wasn't aware of. Honestly, I was like, maybe you're an early bird because you have to go to the office. But yeah, that's a proof that you're a night owl because we are doing this in
Yeah, yeah,
this
definitely.
podcast and it is
And I am not feeling sleepy at all.
same here. Same here. Same here. I used to sleep only by 2 a.m., 3 a.m. That's like my normal time of sleep. So yeah, that's what that was all about it. And thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. Thank you so much for taking out your time. Your time is very precious, I'm sure. And at the position you are, you have so many things going on in your mind. But it is so kind of you that you have still taken out your time and devoted here in the podcast. And I have been inspired so much. I have learned so much, and I'm sure the people who would be watching it, they would also be getting inspired as I have got. So thank you so much once again for being a part.
Thanks for like getting me here. I think my all the conversation was very useful, and I mostly answered those in the most honest way. There was no script in my mind. I was just thinking and answering everything, and that was the most natural conversation that I ever had. That
Thank
too
you.
that too very long, right? So
Yeah,
I think it was useful for a lot of. It would be useful for a lot of people. Let's see.
I'm sure. I'm sure. I'm sure. Thank you so much once again. Thank you.